What's going on today? This is Blanche Eden, your host for Black Trending News. This is episode number 20. I have to say I'm very happy with what I've done so far in this channel. If you're listening, please subscribe. Please like. If you enjoy the platform, support it. With that, I don't ask for money. Let's get into the story. This is a very sad story. I know I sound in an uppity mood, but this is a very sad story I saw on Facebook the other day, and I'm sure hundreds of thousands of people saw it. But I wanted to make a story about it. I haven't found anything online where they were taking money donations from anybody, so I can't even post that. But I do want to share the story and make my message on it at the end. So it looks like back in 2011, there was a young man named by Kahlif Snowden. He was tasered in the neck 4 times within 43 seconds. He was wrestled down by half a dozen police officers. Really sad story. His current state is that he is in a vegetable state. His father is by his side every day. His father goes to work and comes back to the hospital and is with his son every day. The father says that his friends used to come, but they don't come anymore, and his father again feels no hostility. He says his friends have to live their lives. He understands. The mom comes by sometimes, family comes by sometimes. So this is how the world is. There's one loyal person in this young man's life who's 32 now, and it's his father. It says that they celebrated 7 birthdays since the day in 2011. They suspected he was selling drugs. He had been arrested on drug charges before. Still not an excuse to what is happening to this man today. It said one officer shot him with a stun gun in the neck 4 times in 43 seconds. By the time the incident at East Indiana Avenue and Grants Back Street was over, Leafy, as his family called him, had retreated into himself. Cops said he had resisted arrest. There was an internal investigation, but no charges were lodged against the officers who said the then 25-year-old stopped breathing because he had swallowed drugs. The father says an emergency room doctor told him they found nothing in his throat. A toxicology report found nothing. In a deposition, a doctor testified that he removed a small plastic bag from his airway. The officers are still on the job. A life sentence is served by the father and son nonetheless. And this is from the Inquirer. And the reporter who did this was Helen Ubiñas. Very good story that was done last year in June. So about a year ago, this story was drafted up here. And I just heard about it a little more than a year later. So it's just to show you that, it takes time. There's so much in the media, and it just really takes time for stories to get around to everybody. That's why I think it's important that if you hear something like this, you should share it if you can. I'm going to play a clip of the father interacting with his son in a moment because it moved me to tears. It's just, I think my point is that it's really beautiful to see how committed he is, and that he didn't just leave him to the hospital to take care of. One of the hospital member nurses said that when he leaves, he kind of gives out this energy like he doesn't trust them. He's scared to leave. I mean, wouldn't you be scared to leave your son with anybody after what happened to him? So I definitely understand the father's energy and his protectiveness over his son that's already in a very bad state. The anger felt by the father, who used to serve on the police advisory commission in the Northeast 15 district, used to roar from his body like a raging fire. He doesn't downplay that his son got into some things he shouldn't have. Let me be your role model, he'd counsel his youngest. But cops played judge, jury, and executioner on the streets that day, he said. The near constant instances of police brutality across the country prove police still do. So his father was a part of the commission. He was in the 15th district. He served his time, and he admitted his son is not, crime exists, cops exist. People exist, people break the law, they do things, they get involved, but in no means did this gentleman, Kahlif, deserve this type of treatment and this sentence that he has. He should be raising a family and having kids and, trying to get it. I mean, he deserves a second chance like anybody else. It's just really heartbreaking. Let me go ahead and play the clip.
He would call me every day at work, before this happened to him, he would always, Dad, what are you doing? I tell him, I'm at work, Kahlif, Our relationship was really close. He's the son a father would always want. He was funny, articulate, And for me seeing him in this condition, it's sad, because I knew how he was before then, And I had to come up here every day of 7 years to watch my son in this condition. What they did through eyewitness, they brutalized my son. They beat him to a pulp and they tased him in the neck 3 times. And after all was said and done, he coded in the street. He died there. The police officers, to me, were judge and jury executioner out in the street. They did street justice on him. I found all of that out, and it was very heartbreaking, and I was very, very, very angry for what they did, because they treated him like a piece of meat. There we go. He has a anoxic brain injury, lack of oxygen to his brain. This is the stage they left him in. What they call is a woke coma. So he's awoke, his eyes is open, but he can, function like you or I can. He's not paralyzed or anything like that. But he has to be fed through a feeding tube in his stomach. He don't have a breathing machine. He can breathe, but he has a catheter. He needs somebody right now, and I know that he knows that I'm here, and I know he appreciates it. He can't tell me, but the way he looks at me, and the way when I look at him, and I know, and he makes sounds, and I talk to him, and I know he appreciates it. I know he appreciates it. Look at that smile. He's keeping me going too. This gives me a reason to come up here to see him. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't get to my son and see him.
Okay, so this is from an article back in 2012, very near when the incident happened. By the time the officers able to handcuff Kahlif and roll him over onto his side, Vandermeer noticed and announced that Kahlif was not breathing. The officers say that they then placed Kahlif on his back while Shaw began to do chest compressions on him. Sergeant James Morass, who had arrived as Kahlif was being handcuffed, radioed the fire department's rescue squad, but then decided to drop Kahlif to the hospital himself. The doctor who removed the plastic bag from Kahlif's throat has stated that Kahlif's inability to breathe during the arrest caused him irreversible brain damage. Kahlif's father, John Snowden, sued Philadelphia for numerous violations of Kahlif's civil rights in August 2011. U.S. District Judge S.J. Buckwalter partially granted the city's summary judgment and denied Snowden's cross motion. Buckwalter threw out Snowden's false arrest claim, ruling that trained narcotics officers had probable cause after allegedly seeing Kahlif discard a pill bottle. The judge also ruled against Snowden's excessive force claim. The taser was used before Kahlif stopped breathing, and the testimony suggests that he was struggling and potentially a threat. The 19-page opinion states, "The court is cognizant of the fact that Kahlif is unable to testify himself and that the only witnesses to the incident are the defendant officers. Because, however, there are potential issues of fact such that a reasonable jury could find the officers' actions were reasonable, plaintiff's motions must be denied." Buckwalter also found that the officers are entitled to qualified immunity on Snowden's claim that they failed to provide Kahlif with adequate medical care. The contours of the officer's duties, particularly in this hyper-pressurized situation, were not so sufficiently clear that every reasonable officer, even one with training in CPR, would have understood. Okay, so what I find really sad about the story is that the officers that did this to Kahlif are still on the job. They're still working. My point is that we can't control what our kids do, We can't. We have no control if our kids go out there in the street and they start getting into things. But what we do have control over is how we raise them and what we teach them, and how important it is to teach them to do the right things so that they don't end up in situations like this. Now, I'm not saying that there's not young men and women that are doing the right thing that end up in situations like this, because there are, right? Sometimes it feels like there's really no way to avoid these situations. And I can't really argue with that because, we really don't know. Police brutality can happen anytime to anybody, and that's really unfortunate. And we're seeing that play out in front of us in the media and personally in some of our lives. What has been done for them? There is a revised police policy on using tasers, a $2 million settlement from the city. The money put aside for the son's care and doctors who made no promises. So, they are being compensated in some way, but in the end, the father feels like God decides on Kahlif's life. He doesn't want to make the decision to pull the plug. He doesn't want to do that. And thank God he is so caring and he is so committed. I think that's what moved me is that this young man has somebody that loves him so much that won't leave his side. And I was very touched by that. It says the son, now 32, seems to smile, seems to turn his eyes slightly toward his father's voice. Quote, he feels me. He could be asleep, but he knows when I'm here. He can, sense it. Once he hears my voice, he'll force his eyes open. Unquote. That's what the father says. I'm really at a loss for words. I just want parents listening to this, if you have a young man or young daughter, just do the best you can especially when they get older, and just monitoring them, especially if they're living in your house, do your best, do everything you can to, my son is still very young, so I don't know what it's like to have a teenager that's out in the streets. I don't know what that feels like. So I can't really speak on that very descriptively, but I just really feel like if we monitor our children and we know where they are and we're in communication with them and they have the habit of calling us and, us calling them and just going over these things and coming home at the right time and just trying to lessen those chances of something like this happening. Not to say that if you do all the right, you can do all the right things and something like this still happen, but let's lessen that chance. Let's lessen the number of these incidences that are happening by monitoring our children. That is our job as parents. Our job as parents is to monitor our kids. And I'm not saying that Kahlif's father didn't do that. What I'm saying is that we can prevent this in our own lives as much as we can by monitoring our children. And, if however you feel, leave it in the comment section. I'm not trying to be combative or biased for anybody or any sides. I'm just stating that, back to my point with my teen pregnancy podcast, is that it starts in the house. So, when you see these type of, or when I see these type of articles, it does move me. But it should move me, and it should move us all to just have a more firm grip on our kids and how they're raised and what they see and who they hang out with and how their grades are in school and staying in touch with their teachers and making sure they know that you care and you're in their life. Because I feel like when kids know you care, they have something to live up to. They're gonna say, what, my mom and dad, they really give a damn about what I'm doing. Let me try to, most kids will do that. We can't speak for everybody. Everybody's different. But I just hope that this story impacted you in a positive way. There's a lot of stories like this. It's so many stories. Let's not become immune to the stories and just go, oh, it's just another, black person or another police brutality case. Let's say, let's internalize it and say, okay, how can we prevent this in our community? If everybody tries to prevent it in their community and takes the right initiatives to prevent it in their community, then it can be done. It doesn't have to happen. I know Philadelphia has a history. I know the education system is very poor. I don't know the facts on it, but from what I've heard growing up, They have a very poor education system. So perhaps, that's could have contributed to whatever. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But I'm just saying that have a community. And if you be in your community, be involved, and have a good day. Thank you for listening.